First, La La Land Records gave us the ultimate cut soundtrack of Friday the 13th. Next, they gave us the ultimate cut soundtrack of Friday the 13th, Part 2. Then, they gave us the ultimate cut soundtrack of Friday the 13th, Part 3. So it only made sense the next ultimate cut soundtrack would be Friday the 13th, the final, Part 5, A New Beginning. Welcome, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by, this time coming your way to do another one of my reviews of the La La Land Records release of, in this case, Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. Music from the motion picture, The Ultimate Cut. And you might also be able to deduce I was lucky enough to get one of the signed copies, signed by none other than Harry Manfredini. My order was placed like 2 minutes after these went on sale to make sure I secured a signed copy. When I reviewed the Ultimate Cut CD for Friday the 13th, Part 3, I'm pretty sure I would have speculated, okay, so this is, I'm noticing a trend here. Ultimate Cut Friday the 13th, Ultimate Cut Part 2, Ultimate Cut Part 3. At this point we can pretty much just assume final chapter. That didn't end up happening. I was very surprised to get a new beginning, but if you read the inside of the little booklet, it's stated that the original archived reels for Friday the 13th, Part 5, the final chapter. I think that's a typo. They probably meant Part 4, but they don't really know much because Friday the 13th, the final chapter, isn't called Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter. If they knew anything at all, they would know it's Friday the 13th, the final chapter. But it says the original archived reels for Friday the 13th, the final chapter, remain incomplete, which is why a decision was made to leapfrog Part 4, which is not Part 4, it's the final chapter, and release new mixes for Part 5 in hopes the tapes can one day be located. So unfortunately we don't have an ultimate cut of final chapter, but we have one of Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. And I'm pretty sure when I did my review of the Part 3 ultimate cut CD release, I may have pondered the question, would I even be interested in an ultimate cut of Part 5? And turns out, I can't remember what I decided. I probably decided, well, I'm such a big fan of the franchise, it being my favorite movie franchise of all time, the films 1 through 7 being among my favorite movies of all time, I'd probably get it and, would not be able to resist the opportunity to hear some never-before-heard cues or bits of music from Part 5 that have never been heard by, the masses of the film-going community. So alas, when the news dropped of this title being released, I, as I said, ordered it within the first 2 minutes of it going up on sale, and anxiously, maybe not anxiously, but excitedly awaited the arrival of the CD in the mail and instantly put it, onto MP3 so I could just put it on a tablet and easily listen to it that way, and now I'm able to share my thoughts of this CD release with you. Just like with the other Friday the 13th Ultimate Cut releases, I'm not crazy about the cover artwork, but it's not really about the cover artwork at the end of the day, it's about the music contained therein. The autograph by Harry Manfredini definitely makes the cover a little more enjoyable though, in my opinion. So apparently there is a slight difference between the release of Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning Ultimate Cut soundtrack compared to the first 3 Ultimate Cut soundtracks for the first 3 films, that being, if we take a look inside the booklet here, the only assets located for Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, were half-inch analog 4-track tapes. These were not the original recording sessions as was discovered for the first 3 Friday films, rather the isolated sectional recordings archived on 4 independent reels. These newly acquired materials offered plenty of room to create improved mixes over all previously available sources. So what you end up with in this case with the Friday the 13th Part 5 Ultimate Cut Soundtrack CD is a pretty good sounding soundtrack CD with a lot of range and a lot of really nice low ends and really all around wonderfully sounding CD. One thing that I did notice compared to the Ultimate Cut releases for the first 3 films is, if you've seen my reviews for those, you may know that, you know, having experienced these movies for the, you know, several decades of my childhood and teen years and 20s and just my, you know, pretty much the majority of my life, or the better half of my life, watching these movies, I got very accustomed to the music in the movies. So when the first 3 Ultimate Cut releases came out for the first 3 films, one thing that it was cool on one hand to be able to hear, you know, never before heard stuff, but on the other, it was kind of jarring to hear little bits and pieces and differences and changes that, you know, occurred due to just, I don't know, all the technical mumble jumble that was, you know, a part of doing all those CD soundtrack, you know, any of these Ultimate Cut, you know, CD releases or anything. But all I do know is that, you know, for the first 3 films, you know, while a lot of it sounded the same, a lot of it sounded different, and I wasn't too keen on that. And although I do appreciate their efforts in doing these Ultimate Cut, you know, CD releases, and that's why I keep buying them, and one of the reasons I keep buying them, I want to support, you know, all their efforts and all their stuff in restoring and redoing these soundtracks, which are a beloved part of my frickin' childhood and the majority of my life and stuff. They did put out, and I talk about this, I'm not going to go too much into this, but they did put out, La La Land Records did put out around the time that they, you know, remastered the movies in the like 2009-ish or whatever. They came out on remastered DVDs, and they all had 5.1 sound remixes and stuff. I think during the process of doing that in 2008, 2009-ish, they were able to access like half-assed versions of the music that way. So then right around, I don't know if it was 2011 or 2012, La La Land Records put out this huge box set of the first 1 through 6 CD set that had, you know, the Friday the 13th music for 1 through 6, which was a huge release for me at the time. And I didn't get it. I ended up getting a signed one on eBay for a relatively decent price, so I was really happy with that. And that was basically exactly what you heard in the movie is exactly how it's presented on the CDs, but it is actually, they all are in stereo, and it was, you know, it was the best way for me to experience the music, you know, from that I never formally have been able to experience on its own. So that release of those first 6 CDs for the first 6 movies was huge. And although, you know, although I do have these, you know, now, you know, 4, but before this came out, it was the first 3 films on the Ultimate Cut CD releases, and do enjoy aspects of the releases and being able to hear the never before heard bits of music and stuff. I do find myself, especially for like the first movie, going back to just the original release that La La Land Records put out because of the first movie, or maybe the second. I don't really listen to I mostly listen to the music for the first movie, but I have actually been finding myself listening to a lot of this Part 5 soundtrack a lot, mainly probably because, you know, so much of the music in Part 3 is recycled music anyway, so that's probably why. And to be fair, you know, if they ever do release a final chapter CD as well, that's going to be what that is too, you know, recycled music from 1, 2, and 3 and things. But I did find myself really enjoying just listening to the New Beginning music, because if you guys may or may not know, like for the first time since like the second movie really, he's doing all, I mean, actually for the first time since the first movie, I think every bit of the music for Friday the 13th Part 5 New Beginning is brand new. Like even in Part 2, I think there's a little bit of recycled music from the first movie and stuff, so even Part 2 isn't a brand new, you know, music for Friday the 13th Part 2, but for the first time since the first movie, Friday 5 actually has completely all new music. So that's really, you know, something that's really, you know, going for this Ultimate Cut CD release, is that it's not all just like, you know, the CD release, Ultimate Cut CD release of Friday 3, you got a lot of recycled cues from the first 2 movies in that, whereas this, it's like all fresh music, which is really fun. And I gotta tell you, it does sound like sonically, I'm not some kind of amazing audiophile or anything, but it does sound really good. Just, you know, really deep thumping lows and really nice range, and it does sound really good. And as I'm doing all this blabbing, I don't want to forget to mention the main point which I was trying to get to, is that I was talking about the first three films and the the Ultimate Cut CD releases for the first three films, and finding so much of that sounding, although it's more or less the same, there's little bits and pieces that kind of put me off, so I find myself listening to the original CD release because it sounds exactly like it does in the movie. This I don't know if it's because, I suppose it probably has something to do with them not being able to find the original recordings or whatever they said, like they did for the first three films. But this movie, or this music for this movie, doesn't sound as different, or it doesn't sound really different at all than it does from the music in the movie, which is really, really great to, to hear. It's like, one of the things that puts me off about the first three Ultimate Cut CD releases is that it's little bits and pieces are changed, it's different. And although, I probably don't watch, well, no, I pretty much watch 1 through 7. Like, I'm such an like an OCD, or what did I say, OCP, obsessive compulsive persuasion bastard, that it's hard for me to actually just watch one of the movies. Like, if I just watch Friday the 13th, I'll pretty much just over the course of days and weeks just go, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I was going to say that maybe I watched, the earlier films more, but, in recent years I pretty much watched them all the same amount. Like, I gotta go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, kind of like, OCP, obsessive compulsive persuasion. That's my term for it, because I think to call it a disorder is a little disingenuous, because it's like, I think there's some advantages to obsessive compulsive persuasion. So to call it a disorder, I think is a little shitty. To call it a disorder, I think is a little shitty. To call it a disorder, I think is a little shitty. To call it a disorder, I think is a little shitty. So I call it obsessive compulsive persuasion. So it's actually really a nice surprise to hear the music in this Ultimate Cut of Friday the 13th Part 5, and the fact that it sounds so much like the music that's heard in the movie and don't have a whole lot of differences. The only differences being, I guess, the new previously unheard bits and pieces of music that you can hear in this CD, which was really fun. The first track on this release that's supposed to have never before heard music is track 3. I didn't notice anything new on this track, but that doesn't mean there isn't anything new on this track, just probably not anything new, but who the hell knows. The previously unheard music in track 6 is fun. It basically represents the madness welling up inside of Vic before he unleashes all-out mayhem on Joey's back with an axe. So that was, I think that's the first bit on this album of formerly unheard music that I could tell being something new on this CD release. So that was fun to hear, albeit a lot of this stuff is obviously very short, but being a huge fan of these films for just decades and decades, even if it's just mere seconds of something new, it's really, really fascinating to hear, and this track is no exception.
Here, I'll just put it over here, and later on when you're hungry, you can have it. Well, if that's the way you feel, forget it, Vic. Just forget it. But I think you're really out of line.
Previously unheard music on track 9 with the flare kill. I want to say it's 2 or possibly 3 times longer than it is in the movie. I would imagine this music was composed and recorded before the MPAA made them butcher a lot of these kills. So just imagine this kill being 2 or 3 times longer than it is in the movie. I don't know what the hell they would have showed for that amount of time, but the music definitely represents it was that the flare kill was 2 or 3 times longer than it is in the final cut. Kind of fun and interesting. For tracks 12 and 13 I have on my notes, the new music is nothing amazing, so that's a little bit of a bummer, but that can happen with life. Track 17 is interesting. There might be a little more music at the end of Demon's death. His death, like so many others in this movie, might very well have been longer than it is in the final versions, so he might have just, you know, just sat there on that, with a pole ran through him and just sat there for more seconds just going, or whatever. So probably a little more music after Demon gets killed, you know, maybe during the writhing and stuff before he eventually passes on and leaves this earth. On track 18, there might be music that was previously unheard that was written and recorded to be over Junior's death. I don't think there's actually music on Junior's death because the motorbike is so loud and stuff. I think it's silent, but I'm pretty sure it's possible that the music on track 18 was, or there is at least a section on track 18 that is probably written and recorded for Junior's death.
About time, you fuckwad.
Track 19, the music for Robin's death, is probably more extended on this version than it is in the movie, but like I say, they probably wrote and recorded this music before the MPAA made them cut the death scene shorter. So if that's the case, kind of cool to hear the extended music for potentially Robin's more lengthier death. Asterisk on track 20, which would suggest there's previously unheard music on track 20, although I couldn't hear any music on track 20 that I've never heard before, but it's possible some of these asterisks are incorrectly placed, but that's just my input. I can't be 100% sure, but more than likely sure that nothing new on track 20, but what do I know? Track 21 is kind of difficult. There might be little bits and pieces of previously unheard music, bits and pieces here and there, hard to tell. Track 25 is interesting if you know the end climactic scene in the barn up on the top level of the barn when Tommy saves the day by hacking quote-unquote Jason's arm to save Reggie and Pam. There's a bit of music that extends, would indicate that this scene was longer as well, and it's really weird where it's placed because it's like when Tommy gets up and looks down at the arm and is about to raise the machete to then chop it, there's extra music in between during that section there. So it's like, I don't know if he possibly, maybe raised the machete and maybe stood there for a while contemplating whether to do it, or maybe there was a flashback from Final Chapter. More audio from Final Chapter, who the hell knows, but in between that section right before he's going to chop quote-unquote Jason's arm, there's extra music there which would indicate maybe he's pondering it longer and they decided to cut that bit short. At the end of the day, it's hard to say what was there, but that was actually really interesting to hear. It's like, oh, I think there was like 2, 3, or 4 seconds somewhere around there of extra music extra time where something must have been going on between him standing up and ready to chop and between that and him chopping. Kind of interesting, and just this kind of makes me hearing this extra music kind of makes me want to see the extra footage. Probably doesn't exist, but really that's what I love about these Ultimate Cut releases of the Friday the 13th soundtracks, is just kind of to hear not only to hear the new stuff, but just be like, God, what the hell's happening during this bit of music that was not used in the movie? Like, and the scene was probably cut as well. It's just like, what was there? What was going on? Just, I guess we'll never know. Track 26 is very similar. It's like there's extra beats of previously unheard music before Tommy attacks Pam, so possibly more pondering or more madness before the eventual moment of Tommy's attack on Pam at the very end of the movie. Also got 3 what they call bonus tracks. These are, we've heard this stuff before on the other release. Heavy Metal Source, it's really cool. It's that bit of music that that one guy is listening to in his car when he comes to pick up Lana. That bit of music's fun to actually have in its little entirety as a complete song. Funk Source is just like generic music meant to be heard in Vi's headphones, or even heard when Jake comes into her bedroom later on. It goes something like Ba-da-da-bow, bow, bow, wow. And then the last track on here under bonus tracks 31, it's just ki, 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 ma, ma, ma. That's actually for the bit in the opening credits where the Friday the 13th logo, fades in as a negative and then goes to positive, and then the mask, before the mask comes through and blows it up, it's kind of like this, sustained violin thing, and then like a but it's only once, I think, on this track. In the final movie they have that, happen twice, and then the mask comes in and blows up the Friday the 13th logo, and the music, the opening title music starts. This is what the back of the CD looks like, following in the traditions of the Ultimate Cut soundtracks of Friday 2 and 3, kind of utilizing the VHS home video cover artwork in this case. Part 5, not exactly sure what that is in the eye there, if that image is supposed to be discernible. It almost looks like, I don't know what the hell it looks like. Don't exactly like when they try to change stuff, if that's in fact what they're doing. It looks like it's supposed to be something, but I can't tell what the hell it's supposed to be, if in fact it is supposed to be something. But not crazy about the resolution of the Part 5 front cover artwork hockey mask in this situation. For the VHS release, the resolutions leaves a little bit to be desired. The resolution for the the Friday the 13th Part 3 poster on the back of the Ultimate Cut CD of Part 3 was in much better resolution than this. This looks really kind of crappy. Inside of the booklet, they're using that crappy, stupid 2009 DVD, remastered DVD artwork that they came up with. Luckily, they made it look so hard to see that you can't really, just have the random house there, and I guess the hockey mask with the chevrons are, the New Beginning chevrons are fine, but like to even use that artwork just makes no sense to me. CD itself looks like this. You can see they took out the shears aspect of it, which is, this is, I appreciate being able to see both versions of the newly commissioned cover art for the Ultimate Cut of Part 5 soundtrack. It's cool to see the New Beginning hockey mask without having to have it be covered over by the shears and the reflection of the chick in the shears. So that's what the CD looks like. Pretty sure the back here is just like the first 3 CD releases, with good old Harry Manfredini doing his magic. Another thing that was kind of striking to me is the stills from the movie that are featured inside the booklet are really, really kind of cool, and a lot of stills I haven't seen before, certain angles, this and that. Very colorful and fun as I'm flipping through here. Some scenes, some stills, like look at this one where it's just like the 4 of them are standing there, and just the way Reggie's arms are, just like, oh my god, like it's just funny. And some of these stills I'm not too sure I've seen before are kind of fun in the booklet. So that's something I didn't want to forget to mention, is really, really nice stills, alternate angles, things that you're really not used to seeing. Some of the stuff's familiar, of course, but some of it I don't think I'd really ever seen before. So the stills featured inside of the booklet are actually really kind of fun, and a discerning eye may be able to see this still that worked its way in from Friday the 13th, the final chapter, so someone didn't even realize they had the wrong still from the wrong movie here, but I think that's the only one that's not supposed to be from this movie. Look at that shot of Pam there as she's getting stabbed. Almost looks like it's a sensual stab, but like that shot, for example, I don't think I'd ever seen. Also this one with the death of Ethel there, I don't think I'd ever seen that before. So it's really cool to see those, these pictures, a lot of which I don't have a recollection of ever seeing before. So I definitely appreciate their inclusion in this release as well. So all in all, I think this is actually probably one of the better Ultimate Cut CD releases, because the music sounds mostly like it did in the movie. There's not a lot of discernible changes that I could hear in things sounding different, or this added there or that added here, like some of the instances, from in my experience with the first 3 Ultimate Cut Friday the 13th CD releases. So this is actually, interestingly, one of the better Ultimate Cut, if not maybe, my favorite almost Ultimate Cut Friday the 13th CD releases, just because it doesn't deviate very much, if at all, from what I was used to hearing from, watching the movie, and to hear the way the music sounds when you watch the movie. You know, one thing that can be said is, you know, fidelity and stereo, and like I say, the low end is greatly enhanced and stuff, and to be able to hear that, like I say, the previously unheard bits and pieces of music is really fun. So all around a stellar release, honestly, and one that if you're a Friday the 13th Part 5 A New Beginning fan, I would definitely highly recommend. Guess that pretty much does it for this review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, we'll catch ya on the next video.